Now, today we are talking all things cheese, from the sublime to the surprising, because there's no reason for cheese or season, but then Christmas is coming.
If you are lactose intolerant, you can eat cheese.
You can.
Yes. So good milk for me means that it has come from somewhere which hasn't had intense farming. It is a place where the animals are happy. Happy cows give good milk.
Fruit and cheese. What about fruit in cheese? Any thoughts on that? Good, bad, ugly?
I think that for a long time up until pretty much now, it's been seen as slightly inferior because there are certain cheeses which have fruits in them where the fruit is almost masking the cheese for it not being that interesting.
I wonder what your fridge looks like, actually.
Gosh, it's actually quite funny looking at cheesemonger fridges because we talk about and we taste some of the best cheeses in the world, but then we don't treat ourselves as nicely when we get home.
Welcome to In Good Taste, the podcast on food matters for food lovers. I'm Malika Basu, a food writer, commentator and advisor. Every week we bring you sharp, snackable conversations about what's shaping the way we eat and drink across cultures, kitchens and continents. From big issues to bite-sized trends, it's all on the table. Now, today we are talking all things cheese, from the sublime to the surprising, because there's no reason for cheese or season, but then Christmas is coming. It was also the World Cheese Awards recently from our friends at the Guild of Fine Food. I don't know about you, but my news and social media were brimming over with cheesy goodness. It's having a moment if there could ever be such a thing. And I can't think of a better person to be cheesy with than Emma Young. Hello, Emma.
Hey Malika, how you doing?
Really good, thank you. Now, Emma, you're a self-proclaimed cheese explorer with 13 years in the business across retail, wholesale and cheese making. And you're now a consultant to the industry as well as the published author of a fantastic book we're going to talk about later.
That sounds quite good when you put it like that. It's now 16 years actually. I need to bring my website.
You do. Sorry, but you don't look old enough. Must be all that cheese you're eating.
It is. It's definitely the cheese and a bit of Asian genes, you know. 82.
Now, let's talk a little bit about that because you have an interesting background. Do I remember correctly that you're half Filipino?
Yes, my mom's Filipino, dad's English. So I was born in England. I was brought up very much as a Brit, but yeah, absolutely half-half.
Love that. So do you remember your first taste of cheese?
I do actually. Well, I have a couple of really early memories which are quite interesting. So my mum and dad actually owned a cheese shop, a deli, when I was -1. So they owned it and I was born into it. So I have a very strange memory. It might just be from looking at photos, if I'm honest, but I used to spend a lot of time in the shop. And I remember sort of aromas of like sort of washed rind stinky cheeses. But my first taste memory, I was chucked in at the deep end, Malika. So I had a family who were very Francophile and we travelled a lot to France and I was thrown straight into Roquefort and Epoisses. So this was in France, in a gîte. We'd always go on holiday in a gîte. And I am still an only child, so I was part of the family, and that I would eat whatever they were eating, and that was a Poisson Roquefort on one occasion.
That is brilliant. I mean, that is really not a taste of childhood, is it? I mean,
Not like, I was playing in the field and eating a little cheddar sandwich. It was full on, right, here you go, see how you handle it. But obviously it worked because I really like those cheeses, and got a palate which is there for strong flavours.
that is brilliant. And so how did you then get into this as a career? Like, what does career progression look like when you're a cheese explorer?
Yeah, it's kind of quite random. I fell into cheese by accident, like most people in the UK especially. We don't have a culture of cheesemongers where we do in other countries. So there wasn't I grew up in a cheese family, for instance. So I was at university, I needed a part-time job and some money to fund said fun at university. And I thought, what do I like doing? I really like cheese. Do you know what? I'm going to apply for a job in a cheese shop. And that's where it all started. It was very simple. So I started working at a deli in Sloane Square in London. And I quickly realised that there was more to cheese than it just being tasty. I really started learning more. I started doing all of my research, and essentially I stayed in that career. I finished my degree, which was in linguistics, so not at all related. And then I decided to go down a retail route. I worked for Whole Foods Market as their cheese room mouse. I looked after the cheese room there for a while. I then helped them open their Richmond store. Then I did a affiliation with cheese making, running a wholesale department for a French distributor, and then I started my own company just around the time of COVID, which was interesting timing.
A very interesting time. I mean, what an interesting journey that is as well, because of course you've also written this great book, which I love, and I have gifted. Oh, here it is. Very good for those of you who are not actually seeing this, watching this, you're listening to it. Emma's just flashed us a copy of her book.
Standard, classic job promotion. But yeah, no, I've written a book. How cool is that?
And you've got, 110 cheeses in there? Do I remember that correctly?
Yes, so there are 110 cheeses. So for those of you who can't see what I'm holding up now in front of the screen, it is essentially a wheel. It's called the cheese wheel. And it is not anything I've made up. It's a flavour wheel. But the premise of this is that I've linked cheese by flavour instead of geographical location. So all of these cheeses are from around the world. So 110 cheeses from India to Italy to northern Spain to Mexico. And all of these cheeses have a root sort of flavour link. And the idea of the book is to show you, if you like this kind of style, what can you try next? What is it similar to, and why is it similar to that one, essentially?
I love it so much, and I actually have it in my kitchen on a shelf to just use as a handy reference guide, because I grew up in India, Emma, and I'd only ever eaten two kinds of cheese before I moved to the UK. One was paneer, which of course is the fresh cheese, and by the way, what I ate for breakfast to get into the mood for our chat. And then there was and then there was Amul cheese, which is like a hard processed cheddar that you could buy in a tin. I don't know if you've ever come across it, but they were very...
I tried a couple of tin cheeses. Tell me more. What does it taste like?
Like a very hard processed cheese. Sort of medium salt. I'll tell you what Amul was really well known for, apart from, of course, being the only processed cheese you could buy when I was growing up, was they had these incredibly political advertisements, which we loved and we looked out for their butter and cheese. But anyway, I digress. I think your book is amazing because it's so practical and useful, because, of course, there is so much on offer out there, right? And buying cheese well, storing it properly, knowing how to combine what it can feel like quite a tall order. So I'm going to start by saying asking you a very, very basic question, which is, what makes a really great cheese? What should we be looking for?
What should we be looking for? So what makes a great cheese? There are several things which I think are fundamental, and then there's a lot of subjectivity behind it. So a great cheese for me is something that you like. If you try something and you don't like it, for you it might not be a great cheese, even if it ticks all of the boxes. So for me, a great cheese has to be something that comes from good milk to start with. So cheese by definition has to come from animal milk. So I think good milk source has to be a part of it. Well thought through and well put together process of cheese make. And I think that affinage, so cheese maturing, is really, really important as well. And it doesn't need to be the most complex cheese in the world, but making sure that the cheese maker or the maturer at the end stage is really able to get the best out of that cheese, if it's like a mild and creamy but texture driven cheese, or a really, really complex 9,000 billion different flavors within a cheese kind of style. So I think there are lots of different factors, and also I'm really into looking at the beginning as well. So how is the pasture kept? How are the animals kept? This is really, really important to me as well. That fundamentally, for a good cheese, I think we need to like it. It needs to be about flavour.
Fascinating. And when you say good milk, what does that mean? Is there a way for the average cheese lover to know whether the milk is good or not?
It's quite tricky from just looking at a packet. So it is hard to know about good milk, but it is something that us as cheesemongers are really sort of well versed in giving and sharing information about. So good milk for me means that it has come from somewhere which hasn't had intense farming. It has had it is a place where the animals are happy. Happy cows give good milk. Also, good diversity in the feed, or if they're out on pasture, amazing pasture. And then where you can have raw milk cheese, it is really good. So unpasteurized milk is obviously going to have a bit more complexity than thermoised or pasteurized. But good milk is essentially something which is living. It's not completely heat treated. There's some living sort of microorganisms within it.
That is really quite interesting, because you wouldn't think about that, would you? You wouldn't kind of consider the beginning of the process. You'd almost look at taste and take your lead from that. But all of those things add up, I suppose.
Yeah, absolutely. So a cheesemaker's job is fundamental. If they can't make a cheese, you won't be able to transform that good milk and you won't be able to make a good end product. But if they start with a base product which doesn't have much in it, they can make a very well-made cheese with a good texture, for instance, or very easygoing, very approachable cheese, but they can't make anything really, really good and interesting. So milk is incredibly important.
I can see that completely now. You've explained it so well. And tell me, how does one actually get a good cheese? Like, do you recommend buying it in a particular place so we can shortcut some of this? Because I just see a massive headache coming on with cheese buying now.
It's annoying, isn't it? The more you know, the harder everything becomes. The more you learn, the less you know. So with cheese buying, as with all food products for me, it's really important to know where it's coming from. So buying from a cheesemonger versus a supermarket will give you an extra step. So I'm not saying don't buy cheese from supermarkets. They're a really good place to buy cheese. They're really well diffused. However, specialist cheesemongers and cheese shops, we're there to give you that information, to talk you through, to taste the cheeses with you, to make sure you like them beforehand, but also for you to ask us all of these questions and for us to be able to say, this one is here, this was made with the milk from 11.5 cows, whereas this one is slightly larger production, etc. So I think the role of a cheesemonger is incredibly important. That whole journey has been so well thought through, so intricate, that we as a cheesemonger at the end are really important to get that message across and to match make cheeses with the final consumer. However, supermarkets are obviously a lot easier to find. They do have a much more basic range, a smaller range of cheeses, but there are some out there who've got some excellent ranges where they've specified, we've got a small artisan push on this style, or we've got a number one range, or we have an extra range, etc. And those can be really, really interesting for finding gems. But try going to your local cheesemonger first is what I would suggest.
I think I might try that. The idea I have found a little bit intimidating because I don't know that much about cheese. I just like eating it, basically. I'm like a big fan of pulling together a cheeseboard and shoving my face in it.
That's the best part. That's the most important. That's why we want to make you enjoy shoving cheese in face by giving you the information you need. And the whole premise of the book as well is to make it a little less daunting. So you can even, I've heard people going in with their book and using it almost like a little tick list, or do you have this one?
Yes.
And it shouldn't be something that's daunting. We're really nice as cheesemongers. We're very open. We're actually a really nice species. So we want...
Excellent. I can confirm that you're very open, especially after you and I have eaten some cheese and drunk some champagne together. Yes, we become extra open. Hey, so what are your favorites? Like, what do you have? I wonder what your fridge looks like, actually.
Oh, gosh. It's actually quite funny looking at cheesemonger fridges, because we talk about and we taste some of the best cheeses in the world, but then we don't treat ourselves as nicely when we get home, or we feel like you can't waste anything, so you have the little nubbins at the end. And cheesemonger fridges are a completely different sort of image to what you think, but they are full of cheese. So for me, I'm a huge fan of lactic goat's cheeses. So these are your little format, slightly crumbly, lemony, nice acidity kind of styles. I love those. I really love soft cheeses like your Camembert, Brie, Baron. My God, those styles. Mont, Vacherin,
Mont.
Love, love, love them. And I'm very partial to a blue, and but I don't buy many, which is quite strange. If you put a blue in front of me, I'll smash it. But I don't, for some reason, buy that much blue outside of winter, which is bad. Bad cheesemonger Emma.
But you must get so much gifted to you, no? You must just go home with cheese the whole time.
But it's lovely. It's it's an honour to have people sending cheese, especially new cheeses. I get a lot of that from cheesemakers who have perhaps created a new cheese in their range, or a completely new cheesemaker just asking for feedback. And that's something like I said, I'm honoured to be able to do, but it's also so exciting to see that new cheeses are being created all the time.
I love that. And now you mentioned Mont d'Or, and I'm thinking about seasonality in your fridge now, because of course cheese has seasons too, doesn't it? And Mont d'Or is probably the best example of that.
Yeah. So we are exactly cheese is seasonal. We know about this a lot more in sort of goat and sheep's cheeses. So if you look at cheese counters in cheese shops, you'll see a big range of goat and sheep's milk cheeses around sort of spring, just before spring, all through summer, and then it tails off around sort of autumn into winter. So that is with the kidding season, essentially. It's when the animals are out on pasture, they have their babies. For that season, the milk is in full abundance and you see lots of cheese. We see cheese all year round because certain, like cows, for instance, are easier to milk all year round. Goats and sheep goats are a little bit harder to what we call de-season, which is to have them give birth outside of a normal natural cycle. And sheep is almost impossible. So you'll either see gaps in styles of cheese around sort of autumn, winter, or you'll see cheeses which have different age lengths to cover that gap. So Roquefort, for instance, is a seasonal cheese, even though we see it year round. And sheep only give birth, they only have milk from about December, January, February into about September, October, November, depending on the year. And to bridge that gap, they essentially age cheeses for longer. But Mont d'Or, you mentioned, it is my favourite seasonal cheese. If I had to pick a favourite, why not? I really
mine too, by the way. It just feels it's like Christmas is here, you know. It's just they're lovely. Explain to us what Mont d'Or is for those who are not in the know, please.
So it's essentially a soft cow's milk cheese, which has been wrapped in spruce. The spruce, so like a wooden, almost a corset. So it's got a wooden band around the outside, and that holds it together essentially because it's so soft. And then it's in a box. But there are two versions. There is Mont d'Or, or Vacherin du Haut Doubs from France, and that is unpasteurized. And from Switzerland, we have Vacherin Mont d'Or. So they have pretty much the same name with a slight difference, but the French version is unpasteurized. And unfortunately, we can't get it this year because of certain restrictions. But the Swiss Vacherin Mont d'Or is thermized, and we are able to get it this year. So we've got a lot of the lovely, delicious Swiss Vacherin Mont d'Or this year.
It sounds incredible, and you're making me want to just go and buy it like now. I need to get my skates on soon.
But all long season, Malika.
I've got a long season.
And finishes in March, so we've got.
Oh, really? I did not realize the season was that long. I thought it sort of came in for November.
That's when we all start going for it because it's colder. So that's the kind of thing you associate with cold weather and winter. But the season is really long, so I eat it into March.
Okay, well, that's very good to know. You've just extended the season for me by 3 months at least. So that's good. But, all of this, listening to you, speaks to, the craft and the skill and, the artisanal piece to it that goes from generation to generation. And I suppose it's for us to support that, isn't it? Even though maybe we're not cheese spurts, if that's a word, but, just understanding and appreciating cheese and the skill and, the ingredients that go behind it count for so much.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's something that we are all cheeseburgers to an extent. I like that word too. It doesn't roll off the tongue that easily, but I love it.
No, sorry.
Cheese spurts. Also, the cheese explorer doesn't roll off the tongue either. Don't worry. So I think it's important that we know what we like. We keep exploring cheeses. We've talked a little bit before, me and you, over champagne, about perfect cheeseboards and things. I think that's always a nice way for a group of people to be able to try different things that they might not have necessarily tried before, or a sort of a nice way of experimenting where outside of your norm of what's in your fridge, it's nice to put a cheese board together.
And we should talk about a cheese board. What a great segue, Emma. How did you know to move straight onto that now? Cheese board. We love a cheese board. Do you have any top tips or advice on how to create the perfect cheese board?
Yes, I do have lots of tips. I think the first thing, as I sort of alluded to earlier, is to make sure you're buying cheeses that you definitely don't dislike. So I think it's good to be open and to try new things. But if you know you categorically don't like blue cheese, don't buy blue cheese for your cheese board. I do think there's a blue cheese for everyone, but I'm never forceful. I think you should enjoy what's on your board to start with. Then I came up with the thing, Malika. I feel really proud of myself, but I know, so exciting. I was thinking about this at like 3 a.m, not sleeping. But I think a really nice thing is I've linked it to, what's it called? It's like that sort of wedding, not a poet, but there's something old, something new, something borrowed, something blue phrase. I was thinking about that for some reason, and I think it's a really good model for putting together a cheese board. So something old being something traditional that's been around for a long time and possibly long aged as well. So a traditional cheddar, Alpine style, Manchego, something with a bit of age to it. Something old, something new being a new cheesemaker potentially. So cheese which is newer in the world, a new recipe, or maybe something which has been elevated a little bit more developed. I think new is definitely something that's exciting because we are seeing an industry that's evolving all the time. Borrowed, I really like in the fact that there are lots of cheeses which are inspired by other recipes and other cultures. So we've got to be careful in naming things if they're protected, but things like a brie style, for instance, things which are inspired by something else, that's always quite interesting to see how relates within a different setting.
And good for chatting around the table. Yes, excellent.
And blue, I mean, I've said don't get if you don't like it. It feels like it's a classic, especially in the UK. We have some of the best blue cheeses in the world in Stilton, Stichelton, those kind of Shropshire blue styles. And I think blue is one that I do always have on my cheese board, but I understand that it's quite graphic, isn't it, Malika? A blue cheese does.
It is.
Iron mouldy.
It is, but saying that, I feel like a cheese board is incomplete without a blue. It can divide the room a little bit, but you kind of got to have a blue cheese, don't you, on a cheese board?
I've done this all the time. I think also, I agree. When you see people coming into a cheese shop and asking for you to help them put a board together, they always finish with "and a blue." There are what I call gateway blues, which are slightly milder, a little bit approachable, with lighter, less spicy sort of strains of blue mold within them. So again, that's a job of a cheesemonger. If you're in the shop, you can taste them and see if you categorically dislike it or if it's actually all right.
And interesting, you haven't talked about textures, because I would have thought that you have a hard, you have one that's a soft, you maybe have a blue that's a little bit more creamy. And so I don't know, is there a rule on that at all?
I think you're right in that you should have a mixture. My boards are 95% soft, so I'm not a good example for this. I love soft cheeses and younger or texture-driven cheeses, but you're completely right. It's good. Texture is such an integral part of cheese as well as flavour that you're completely right. It's good to have sort of soft and gooey, slightly more flaky, a little bit chalky, hard and snappable, etc. So yeah, you're right. Mix it up. And it's good to sort of keep interest in texture as well as flavour. Some people are really quite sensible to different textures, so it's good not to have texture.
Okay, well, that's something to bear in mind as well. Once you've bought the cheese, do you have any top tips on how to actually store it and keep it? Is foil okay? Can they go in the same Tupperware?
I think the best option is to use wax paper if you've got it. So if you're buying from a cheesemonger, they will typically wrap in wax paper, and if you know you're going to keep the cheese for a little while, they can give you a couple of extra sheets. I've used baking parchment at home before, so it basically allows the cheese to have a little bit of breathing space. You're not suffocating it in cling film. Cling film is possibly the worst for soft cheeses because there's a lot of moisture content, there's a lot of activity in the rind, so you don't want to suffocate. But within a fridge, we typically say veg drawer, veg compartment, because it's sort of put aside, it's got a bit of humidity. I think Tupperware is quite fun. I did an experiment once where I had cheese unwrapped in the same Tupperware, and it worked so well. Every cheese kept to itself except the blue. Blue wants to give everyone a cuddle and a little.
Right.
But in theory, the joy of maturing cheese and affinage is that those molds are molds for a certain cheese. They don't want to skip around everywhere. They want to stay in their certain condition. So Tupperware works to an extent, but if you wrap everything individually in wax or parchment paper, keep it in the fridge, that's the ideal.
Go, okay, that is top intel, Emma. Very, very good. So I'm going to totally try putting all my cheese into a Tupperware and just wrap up the blue and then see how we go. I will. Now, I did forget to ask you something. I've just remembered. Is that what else goes apart from the cheese on a cheese board? What would you put on it?
Anything you like. I am very much up for experimentation when it comes to flavors. I like to push my limits. I've done a lot. Obviously, your chutneys and your jams are a really easy way to go. They work really well for a reason. You've got acidity, which works with acidity, sweetness, which counteracts salt, etc. That plus crackers or bread is sort of a general. I think fresh fruits are really nice. I think dried fruits and nuts are really fun. Nuts have lots of similar flavors in cheese as well. So you can have cheeses which taste a bit like walnuts, and you can have cheeses which have maybe a hazelnut tone. And I like to play around with that. So putting things together that you can taste within a cheese, but have it as its raw ingredient too. But also you can play around with things like spices. You can play around with chocolate. I like crisps, Malika. I really like.
Oh my goodness. Emma, come on. You've just completely dropped the tone here, but fine, we love it. By the way, have you noticed? I've actually come dressed as cheese? For those of you who are listening to this and not watching, I'm actually in shades of cream and grey to match like. Right.
What cheese are you?
I'm not entirely sure yet, but look, do you not think this is a very on-brand color combination?
You could be like a Tom de Savoie or Carefilly with that nice grey.
Okay, I'll take care, Philly. Fruit and cheese. What about fruit in cheese? Any thoughts on that? Good, bad, ugly?
I think that for a long time up until pretty much now, it's been seen as slightly inferior because there are certain cheeses which have fruits in them where the fruit is almost masking a cheese for it not being that interesting. Nowadays, there are better versions where the base cheese itself is good and the fruits are added to elevate everything. Something I've seen a lot in Paris, I spend a lot of time in France, I've seen a lot in Paris, but it's starting to diffuse as well, is getting really creative with combinations of flavors as if you're a chef. So not masking one thing or the other, but thinking, this really citrusy goat's cheese would be fabulous with yuzu and a little touch of tea pepper, those kind of things. So you play around with flavors, make them look beautiful, and you can get creative. It's not to it is to distract away from the cheese as its own entity, but it's to create something new at the same time. So I think that's quite fun.
That sounds incredible. And the combination of yuzu and some nice black pepper would be just so lovely. Any big myths around cheese that you wish would just go away?
Yeah, there are loads. What's really fun is that as a cheesemonger, you learn a lot from whoever's taught you. So there are lots of myths which will probably continue forever. And I think it's quite funny because some of them are so silly, but we've said it forever and haven't even thought that it might not be factually correct. The one that I do like to dispel for people, because I then become the coolest person in the world, is the fact that if you are lactose intolerant, you can eat cheese.
You can?
Yes. Yeah. So, exactly. So when you make cheese, you're converting the lactose in the milk into lactic acid. So by merit of making a cheese, you are transforming the sugar, that lactose, which is what people have an intolerance to, you're converting it and you're basically eliminating it. So in softer, fresher cheeses, there might still be trace elements where it hasn't all been transformed. So if you're lactose intolerant, I would suggest to try harder cheeses first and work your way backwards to find your limit. But this is scientifically proven. It's not fully silly shoo-shoo. There are... don't know what that means. There are certain... really silly shoo-shoo. Called swallop. That's a better one. So what's really interesting is cheeses like Grana Padano, Parmigiano Reggiano, certain harder cheeses actually put on their packaging and use it as part of their marketing that it is lactose free. So it is something that is proven, and to the extent that they even do put it on packaging. So that's the one I love to tell people, because
how interesting. Because the lactic acid is what aids the fermentation, isn't it? That's what kind of matures the cheese.
But there's loads of different roles. So the lactose is converted. Yeah, I mean, it's definitely got a role down the end in creating sort of flavor and texture changes within a cheese. But it's actually, the fermentation happens sort of right at the beginning and then a little bit more as the process. But you're fermenting the sugars, you're fermenting the lactose within the actual milk as a substrate to start with. So it is fascinating. I think that it's something that I learned quite early on in my career, but I absolutely adore and will never get sick of telling people that one, because so many people are like, you've changed my life. You have changed my life. I wasn't always lactose intolerant, or I didn't think I could eat cheese. Oh my goodness, look at this luminary moment. So that one's fun.
This is very, very fun. And listeners, if you are blown away by this, can you please let us know? Because I think that is a proper life-changing top tip, that is. Emma, do you have any favorite cheeses yourself? What's your kind of will not live without?
So I have a few, but I've had to narrow it down because otherwise it's a whole podcast on its own. Which is fun as well. We'll do it over champagne another time, Annika.
Yeah, let's go.
Oh no, how bad does that sound? I am absolutely enamoured by Stilton. I think that it's one of the best cheeses in the world, not because I'm British, but even the French are obsessed with it. They have it in all of their cheese shops. It's a cheese. So Stilton, Stichelton, those styles are absolutely beautiful, and you cannot contest that they are not good cheeses. I love a camembert. I really, really love a sausage breed. And I love a Saint-Nectaire. Do you know that one?
Ooh, I don't know. A Saint-Nectaire. Tell us more.
A little bit like your jumper. So you could be a Saint-Nectaire. And I think that's what's inspired me. But Saint-Nectaire, there's a British similar style as well called St. Helena. These are what we call semi-hard or tom styles, and I call them in my book chubby babies. You want to squish their cheeks. They have that sort of lovely, almost supple, springy texture. Saint-Nectaire is made in the Auvergne, so sort of central France, and it has a grey, brown, pinky rind. It's very earthy. It tastes a little bit like garden peas and asparagus at some points, but the flavour in the middle is just really buttery and sessionable. So I adore Saint-Nectaire. I think that's one of my favourites.
I'm sold. Let's do this. Roll on cheese eating season. Emma, thank you so much for coming along and sharing your wisdom. I don't know about you guys, but I cannot wait to start shopping, serving, and eating cheese. And you've been brilliant. So thank you.
Thank you so much, Malika. It's been great. And I also now want to eat cheese too. I'm going to go and stuff the place.
Yay! If you've enjoyed watching that and listening in, don't forget to subscribe so you never miss a weekly episode. And email us with your suggestions and top tips. Bye now.